Hello, welcome to Sideways. I was trying to decide this morning whether I could record this introduction having not made any notes about what we spoke about. And a little voice inside me was saying, yeah, Graham, you did that last week, you can't do that again. It's beginning to look a little bit sloppy. But in the spirit of this week's episode, as I wade through this incredibly thick mud, I'm going to ignore that little voice and decide to do what's best for me, which is to get this thing recorded and get the episode edited and put to bed so that I can get on with other things. I do remember we had a conversation about a pigeon who was thought to be a spy and spent 8 months in solitary confinement. But other than that, they're just thoughts in my head. Managing your inner dialogue.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Yeah, all in good spirits.
Excellent.
Apart from, I just had a sneezing fit just as I was about to come on the meeting was about to start.
Oh, well, at least it would have made a pleasant change from you moaning about having a 100-day cold. It looks like you're going to sneeze again.
Yeah, no, I'm all right. I'm okay.
There can't be anything much in life worse than feeling as if there's a sneeze in the tubes that you can't get out.
I know, it's like a scratch that you can't, or an itch that you can't scratch.
Yeah,
way around
exactly
it
that. Imagine having an itch you can't scratch at the same time as not being able to get a sneeze out.
I know, yeah, your life would be bad, but that wouldn't be on my gratitude list, that's for sure.
No.
Anyway, what I was going to talk about today.
Yeah, go on.
The heading of our notes is managing your internal dialogue.
Lovely. We've all got one.
We have all got one. Well, I actually come up in the research. It said some of the areas that I was looking at. Some people said we everyone's got one, and some people said most of us. So I don't know if there's some people that don't have an internal dialogue. I haven't come across anyone that hasn't, but so we go with all.
I can't imagine how you wouldn't have an internal dialogue.
No, I can't, unless there's some sort of mental health issue going on. I don't know, or physical health issue. But it was a discussion point that came up in group again recently, and I know we've sort of touched on it before when we've done episodes. One was called Shit FM, if you remember rightly, which was, and one was, and another one was about silencing our inner critic. But we haven't really discussed the importance of it and how to manage it properly. And I know that you're qualified in NLP, aren't you? I mean, just to explain what NLP is.
Neuro-linguistic programming. The idea that the way that we talk to ourselves, the language we use, has a big impact on not only our existing behaviours, but the way that we can change them.
Yeah, I remember coming across someone just quite by coincidence that I was sitting down by the river having a coffee, and I got talking to a chap and his daughter, and he was in recovery, and he'd use almost exclusively his therapist and NLP to get him into a state of sobriety.
Really?
Yeah. Which he found worked for him.
Yeah, I mean that's the good thing about any sort of psychological intervention, and I think it's probably the same for going into sobriety and maintaining sobriety. What works for you is the best thing, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Yeah, you find your own path.
Yeah.
Exactly that.
So it might be something that other people would not get anything from or would be dismissive of, but it doesn't matter because, you know, what works for you is all that is important.
It is. And I think that it's certainly when you're going into recovery, it's going into, you have to set yourself up with a new load of dialogue, really, because it's a lifestyle change. It's a bit like being deprogrammed when you come out of a religious cult. You know, when there's been doctrines and there's been a lifestyle that's so ingrained that you do have to change the way that you think about yourself.
I think one of the strengths of NLP is that there are truths about the way that we might think about something that's positive in our lives or motivate ourselves to do something quite easily. as opposed to the way we might be thinking about something that makes us feel negative or unhappy or might demotivate us. And if you can use some of the strategies in option 1 to apply to option 2, then it can have quite a big impact. It's very good for working with phobia, I've found.
Right, okay. Yeah, that's good. But again, we're getting into the meat of it like we did last week.
We can't help ourselves, can we?
We can't. We rush off. It's our inner dialogue taking us in a certain direction. It's wandering.
It's our external dialogue as well.
It's transferred to external, isn't it? Yeah. Before we start, after last week's episode, I've asked several people if they have anchovies in their cupboard, and so far the return has been 0. I haven't found anyone so you're the only person I know that actually has anchovies in their cupboard. And a lot of people actually say they're disgusting, they hate them. So,
the first observation I'd like to make about that is that I'm not sure you asking 2 or 3 people is necessarily a representative sample.
I haven't told you how many people I asked.
Well, I still don't think statistically it would be.
You're just squirming because you know you're in the huge minority.
How many people have you asked?
3.
And then the second thing I want to point out is, I assume they're friends of yours.
Yeah.
Well, we're attracted to people who have the same sort of likes and dislikes as we do. So it's not terribly surprising that you hang around with a load of people who are wrong about anchovies.
No, yes, I think it's just very middle-class behaviour to have anchovies in your cupboard.
Yeah, but you like anchovies, don't you?
I do, but I don't have them in my cupboard. But anyway, we could crack on that. There's another point that came up. My youngest, Lizzie, she got in touch to tell me that she got 3 points in last week's pop quiz.
Oh, well done, Lizzie. I think Lizzie's got anchovies.
No, she hasn't. She doesn't like them at all. She was one of the people I asked.
You definitely can't. You definitely can't count if you're asking people in your own family. That's a disgrace.
Okay. You did send me an excellent clip about probably the best excuse I've ever heard for possession of drugs. But I'm going to leave that till next week, I think.
Okay.
So a little bit of a teaser for next week for people. Because it was quite superb. But I came across a great headline that said, "Police release pigeon detained for 8 months for being a Chinese spy." Now, the poor little pigeon. I know we like an animal story, and we've done them before, but in this case, the police in Mumbai, they intercepted a bird with what appeared to be a message in Chinese calligraphy on 2 rings tied to its legs.
Right.
As it turned out, it was a racing pigeon that had escaped from Taiwan. So it was for 8 months they kept this pigeon. I don't know if they tortured it to make it talk. I don't know what was going on there, but
did they bother trying to have whatever was written on its rings translated? Because it probably just had the name and address of the owner.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think they just became very suspicious and banged it up for 8 months.
So they just made the assumption that some Chinese writing on the rings round a pigeon's leg must mean it's a spy.
Must mean it's a spy, definitely. Yeah, it's supposed to be getting messages to someone internally there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's bizarre, isn't it, how suspicion can lead us to such extremes.
Yeah. I'm presuming that particular pigeon didn't win that particular race.
It wasn't a homing pigeon, was it?
I don't know. Oh, you said it was a racing pigeon?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it would have come home eventually, but just 8 months later, right?
It would have, yeah.
What do you think the owner said when it turned? Where the hell are you been?
Eventually, but he didn't win a medal, did you? Coming 8 months late. Anyway,
that sounds like me at cross country at school. Anyway,
well, you had a ring. I
would have been about 8 months late. I think that was in my fat days.
Yeah. I remember those well. Anyway, should we go on to the subject matter?
Yeah, go on.
There's points that came up during research when I was doing this, basically talking about your internal dialogue being quite simply your thoughts, and the voice in your head discusses with yourself really what's going on, either consciously or subconsciously. Yep. And it was this point, they said all or most of us have an internal dialogue, but we're going to go with all people, aren't we? We're going
to go with all. If you don't have an internal dialogue, do let us know.
Yeah, that'd be great. But some people, I think what it boils down to is some people pay more attention to it than others. Yeah,
that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I can't believe that anybody doesn't have one. But anyway, yeah.
I can't, because the next point was really internal dialogue is part of what makes us human. We've all heard of the famous René Descartes quote of "I think, therefore I am."
Exactly.
And I used to think that was just pretentious twaddle, but in this context, it is alluding to the fact that is what makes us human.
Yeah, it's the essence of consciousness, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to get into the debate about whether free will exists, aren't we? If we keep going down this track.
If we go down that track, and I don't really want to, do you? We'll do another one on free will, but that's
not particularly.
No science to that. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Your internal dialogue can therefore be both helpful and unhelpful as well.
Absolutely right.
Which is what we've in the past we've sort of touched on the negativity of it. It turns out really it depends if you're tending to be anxious, your internal dialogue can reinforce that. But if you're in a positive mood, it can be a comfort, especially if a solution is found. If you're pontificating, because we have these internal wrangles, don't we, about perhaps what's wrong and what's the right thing to do. We go on with the solution. So internal dialogue can be quite positive for us as well, can't it? So it's important to understand and to know it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, some people certainly some people have a more powerful inner voice. It's like I think in NLP they call it an auditory submodality.
I like that phrase. I can't begin to understand it.
Well, I'll tell you what it means, because I think it's probably relevant to this conversation. The theory is that we all have slightly different preferences in the way that we think about stuff. So some of us are auditory thinkers, and auditory thinkers tend to work stuff out. In your example, they tend to work stuff out by talking it through with themselves. So they'll have a chat with themselves. They'll kind of hear an inner voice, if you like, or they'll be having an internal dialogue. And then there are visual thinkers, people who will work stuff out by imagining it, seeing it. Okay. So I don't know, if you're doing some DIY, it's always my favourite. You might sort of imagine what this project's going to look like. Well, what do I need to put where? How am I going to do that? Then there are people, and the third of the kind of core ones is a kinesthetic way of thinking, which is people who think according to what they feel about something. Okay. So, I don't know, someone might say, do you fancy coming to such and such? And they will be more reliant on what feeling am I getting about doing that? And if it's a negative feeling, they might be more likely to say no. And if it's positive, they might say yes. So obviously we all use all of those, but the theory is that we all have one that is more prominent than the others. There are a couple of others as well. Like I think olfactory is one of them, which is when people smell stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And gustatory is when you taste it, but they are not quite as prominent for most people.
Okay. There's some good words you've thrown in there, which I've not heard of before, but very good. So we'd agree that it can, the language we use internally into ourselves can affect our mood, can't it, and our self-confidence. Massively, and their self-esteem. You know, it can have an impact there, can't it? One way or another.
It can, and the style of our inner dialogue tends to, this won't surprise you, tends to originate in our early developmental experiences.
No, it doesn't surprise me. But it sounds about right. But that's
we call that introjection.
Okay, that's some great words.
Another nice word.
Yeah, I like it. So when we're is managing our inner dialogue then vital? Would that be one of a vital skill that we really should be able to achieve?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, managing I think is the right word, because it's inevitable that sometimes we, for most of us, that we'll talk negatively to ourselves, or we'll be a bit down on ourselves, a bit sort of hypercritical.
Yeah.
But developing the ability to balance that out with a broader view of all the evidence and thinking of ourselves holistically rather than as different parts is certainly what enables us to move past situations where we might be unremittingly negative to a position where, we take a balanced view. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good answer. I mean, but becoming aware of your internal dialogue was one of the points that came up. I mean, is that are some people unaware of it, or is it something that because it mentions sort of meditation as a good way of becoming aware of your inner dialogue, and if you can only manage it if you're aware of it. But is that I think are we all aware of it? If we all have it,
I think probably people. I mean, it's difficult to know, isn't it? I think people are aware of it. I think people are aware of it to different degrees.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all use phrases like, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," don't we? Stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's your inner dialogue. But who are you talking to?
Well, quite, yeah.
Well, I mean, you might be talking to someone else in the room, but what I meant was we all have those instances where we're saying something to ourselves. We might say it out loud, but essentially that is your inner dialogue. That is you talking to you. So, yes, I suspect awareness of it varies according to different people. Some people here's another good phrase for you. Some people have a more powerful external locus of attention, and other people have a more internal locus of attention. If you're very internally focused, you're much more likely to be more aware of your internal voice. That's good if you've got a positive internal voice, but quite often what happens is if you have an internal locus of attention, quite often where it becomes difficult for you is if you've got a critical inner voice, because you're constantly looking inside, constantly hearing the critic, and you're not mitigating it with, the things that other people might say to you about what you're worried about. So I think that's probably the factor that, one of the factors that would have an impact on how conscious you are of it.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting, and it's a question that came up in group. Someone asked whether, because as addicts, especially in early recovery, our inner voice is telling us to go and have a drink because that's the best idea. And someone asked, is that the same voice that tells us to do that? Is it the one that says, you know what, I don't fancy going to work today, or I don't fancy doing this? Is it the same voice, or is it? Do we have multiple voices, or is it always in our own voice?
Well, we might. That's a good question. So it might be. So if you've got a very powerful inner critic, one of the questions I always ask people is, whose voice is that?
Oh, okay.
And their answer to that will usually be, well, it's mine. But often it isn't. Often, if someone has a particular way of talking to themselves, a particularly critical way of talking to themselves, if you ask them, well, who else in your life sounds like that? Quite frequently, they'll find someone much earlier on that spoke to them like that, and they have introjected that voice. So they've kind of absorbed it and taken it on as their own. So that's part of the answer to the question. The question about, is that voice that says go and have a drink the same voice as says I don't want to go to work, I can't be bothered? It might be the same voice, but you might be pointing towards kind of different parts of yourself. So if you're in recovery, the fact that you're in recovery must mean that you see at least a part of yourself as positive and worth saving and lovable. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in recovery, would you?
True.
But you will also, we carry multiple parts within us. There will also be a part of you, and this, I mean, I've seen this a lot working with addicts, and you'll have seen it a lot. When people are in recovery, they can hate the addict part of them.
Yes.
They really detest that part. And again, I've said this to you before, and I've said it to many other people. Part of recovery has to be kind of embracing all of those seemingly disparate parts into a whole.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can't be a whole person. So the answer to that question, I suppose, is more around, well, what's that trying to do for you, that voice? When that voice is go and have a drink or don't bother going to work today, rather than just judging what it's saying, try and understand what its meaning is. What's it trying to achieve for you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, because I think we were discussing it. We come to the conclusion perhaps it was the same voice that wanted him to start work so he could have a drink. You know what I mean? So there may have been a bit of a conjoined feeling, a conjoined voice, or a voice that was pushing in the same direction.
But I think what's helpful when you hear that voice, which sounds at first to be wholly destructive, it sounds as if it is against you.
Yeah.
If if you make the assumption, although it might be quite a difficult one to make on occasion, that it's trying to do something positive for you, even though it's misguided.
Yeah.
It's worth asking yourself, well, what would be good about having a drink? What would be good about having a drink or not going to work and having a drink? What would be good about it? What would the answer to that be to most people in early recovery?
It would end up in disaster. Yeah.
Well, that's what's bad about it. But
Yeah.
What's the good thing? What would feel good about it?
Oh, initially it would be the escape from reality.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have to resist it anymore.
No, true. That's true. Yeah.
Right, I'd be like, oh, thank God for that. Relief.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've not had addiction problems, but I imagine that there must be times when it's like holding on really tight and you just think, oh, I just want to fucking let go.
I think you get a lot of that in early recovery, where you're white knuckling it, as we say, to get through some of those bad periods. But I was quite interested. So you were saying about, you know, we're almost the voice that we hear may not be ours, but it's almost replicating perhaps their parents. Because I think that I'm sure I use internally in my head during these conversations phraseology from my parents. And so even though it's perhaps in my voice, it's exactly there, the phrase that they would have said or would have used.
Right. So, you know, and most of us are like that. The challenge for us as adults is to separate our own voice from the voices that we've picked up from the past and decide which ones we want to hang on to. So, for instance, if you carry a voice of your mother or your father that you find helpful, fantastic. Keep holding on to it and keep listening to it. Yeah. If there's a little voice in there, you know, if in the past you or anybody else have been kind of criticized for something and you hold that voice, then that's the one you want to try and separate from. You want to try and say, you want to try and remind yourself, hang on, that's not my voice. I don't have to listen to that. I remember I worked with a guy once who'd grown up with a very critical father, and he couldn't it was hard work getting him to separate his father's voice from his own voice.
Right.
One of the ways that I've suggested to people in the past sometimes is, you know, keep a photo of that person.
Okay.
Because then when you're kind of unsure, what is this that's going on here? You can kind of look at that photo and it will remind you, oh, that's what my dad used to say to me.
Right. Okay.
And he took it a step further. He put this little photo in his car, and when he heard his dad's critical voice coming up, he'd just tell him to fuck off.
I like that. I mean,
which going back to the NLP conversation, it wouldn't work for everybody, but it worked for him.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that this voice has a dominant time orientation? Perhaps we're spending too much time thinking about the past, or too much time worrying about the future, and not really staying present, which is where mindfulness comes in, doesn't it? Or staying in the present. Yeah,
it can do. I mean, that I think that probably depends on the mode that voice is in. What is it telling you? You know, I mean, for example, if that voice is telling you, "Oh, you're going to mess this up," because you've always heard that, or you've always believed that about yourself.
Yeah.
Then what you're doing, or maybe you were told that in the past. Then what you're doing is you're traveling back into the past and projecting it into the future.
Yeah.
Neither of which is very helpful. Yes, in a situation like that, mindfulness is really about bringing you into the present and getting you away from those unhelpful thoughts.
How do we change our internal dialogue? What would you suggest if things like, if we're being increasingly self-critical and you're falling into the trap of sort of beating yourself up internally, which again is so prevalent in the recovery industry. We do it all the time, especially if you've had a lapse. The voice then is very much telling you what a bad person you are. And I know we try and impress, really, when we're talking about this in groups, that try and use the same sort of language you'd use to someone else that lapsed on yourself, because we're much kinder to other people than we are to ourselves. Is there any sort of techniques or any ways that you would perhaps try and push someone towards being kinder or to changing that dialogue?
Well, that is a good one. The one that you just mentioned is a good one, because quite often when you say to people, why do you talk to other people in a way that's so different from the way you talk to yourself? That kind of starts that exploration of why do I think this about myself? Yeah. So I think the other things that you can do, I mean, we just talked about one of them. You can think about, where else have I heard this voice? What is my earliest memory of hearing something that either sounded like this, was these words, or made me feel like this? Because quite often, if you can identify the origin of those words or where you found that voice, you will discover it isn't yours. And then it can become, I mean, it's not necessarily straightforward, but it can become easier to separate yourself, your own true voice, from the voice that you're hearing. I mean, I know this might sound an obvious thing to say, but I think if you really struggle with having a vicious inner critic, it's quite useful to do some therapy.
Right. Yeah.
To find out where it's come from. Because, and I'll tell you what the other thing is, which we've also mentioned. Think about what that voice is trying to do for you positively. You know, my belief, and I'm sure it isn't a belief that's shared by everybody, or not shared by all therapists, but my belief is that we don't do anything deliberately harmful to ourselves. Whatever we're telling ourselves to do, however destructive it appears, at some level we have a positive intent, right? To keep ourselves safe, or to make life easier for ourselves, or to give up the struggle, you know, all of these things, which it would be true of addiction. Go and have a drink, give up the struggle. It's like, it'll be easier. I think that's what the voice is telling you.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it can be helpful to work out, well, what is the positive intent of this voice? Because if you can understand what the positive intent is, using your example of the voice that says, oh, I don't want to go to work today, I just want to have a drink. If you work out that actually the positive intent is, well, that voice just wants to make life easier for me, well, maybe you can think of some other less destructive ways of doing that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. That was exactly the point that I'd found during the research about regarding that. And, you know, think about differently also when you are in this situation where perhaps you're criticising yourself for something you've done, like a lapse, for example. You know, give you time to think differently about what you've learned from that situation, how you can change your internal dialogue that's criticising you into saying, well, what have I learned here? How can I do things differently next time? What were the triggers? So you can have that conversation with yourself and turn that into a more positive outcome rather than just constantly slamming into yourself.
Yeah. Fundamentally, to moderate that inner critic, you have to feel as if you're worth it. And one of the ways in which you feel you're worth it is to be able to reframe some of those negative thoughts and behaviours into something else. So if you've lapsed, you haven't lapsed because you're a terrible, awful person. You've lapsed because in that moment it just felt too hard. And you were taken over by the human instinct to just take an easier path. Yeah. You know, which we all have. We might not have it in that way, and it might not be as disastrous as that for many of us, but we all have it. It's like, oh, well, I wasn't eating chocolate for a week and now I've just eaten a whole bar. Okay. You might feel down on yourself, but it might not be as catastrophic as lapsing.
No, quite.
But the point is the same. The harder you come down on yourself, the more difficult you make it to get back on a positive track.
Yeah. Yeah, so, no, that's exactly. I mean, it's answered the questions that were raised, really, and certainly the questions that I had. But there's the last point really was one of the ways to change the direction of your thoughts and to particularly prevent yourself from wanting more, because sometimes we're thinking about, or less perhaps, is to think about what you're grateful for. And this helps you to be more positive because you're looking for the good in your life.
I spotted it this week.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah. Suddenly relief came across me and my little internal voice said, oh, he's flagging the gratitude section here.
Yeah, you can relax, so you don't have to go into therapist mode about NLP anymore.
Exactly. It's your turn first this week.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, my one is working next door, which I'm really, and I'm doubly grateful for that because I've had problems with my car as well. And that's got to be fixed on Tuesday.
Right.
So if I was actually working away from the property or the development here, then I'd have issues. But I can literally, the way the apartments are configured here, I can step out of my door on my doormat onto the doormat of the house I'm working in. No, I'll never work closer than that.
Well. So firstly, your car doesn't need more welding, I hope.
It doesn't need more. No, it's an alternator's gone on it. So it's
nice.
sucks all the battery juice out of it.
I can remember my alternator went once when I was on a dual carriageway. That was quite frightening.
Oh, it must have been because I was just going up the road and it lost. Oh, the lights went out.
Everything went.
No indicators. So I was driving like other people do. The people were bibbing me and all sorts. You know? I was trying to gesticulate that I was having issues, but I managed to get it home. So I was grateful for getting it home. I was grateful the RAC come round within a couple of hours and said, "Hey, you got an alternator gone there, mate."
That's three things you're grateful for.
I know, yeah. I've had quite a lot of great out of the face with adversity because I was really pissed off when it went, as you always are when your car goes wrong.
Yeah, it's a nuisance.
But having it, I was grateful for the RSC to being quite swift in dealing with it and saying, "This is your problem. We can come and do that for you. This is what it cost," which I didn't like, but we can do it on Tuesday for you. So they made the pain easier to bear.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally with you on the working close to home because obviously since the pandemic, most of my work is at home.
Yeah, yeah.
And that it really isn't very far. I have to go, probably about 6 feet to go to work. And I quite like that. It is nice, obviously, to get out when I'm in the clinic. But there's something quite nice about. But it does take a particular. I know you're not working at home. No. Working at home does take a particular discipline. Otherwise, you end up going and putting the washing on and doing stuff like that. But no, I can appreciate that. And I suppose it's also nice because you haven't had to go out in the miserable wet weather. No,
exactly right. So no, because it's just out into the corridor and straight next door, which has been fantastic. And the person,
are you working especially slowly so it lasts a long time?
I'm not because they're away on a cruise, so it needs to be done within 2 weeks. It's got to be done. So we're working at a reasonably brisk pace because there's quite a lot to do, and within the time limit set. So so I'm not slacking, that's for sure. But it's quite nice just popping back to make a coffee and to use the loo and that sort of thing.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, excellent. Well, so the thing I'm grateful for this week is the ability to let go.
Okay, yeah, that is. I think we'd all be grateful for that. You're going to have to explain that further, but it sounds good.
Well, I mean, like most people, well, not necessarily most people, like some people, I do find it quite difficult to let go of certain things that I want to do in a certain way. But this week, half of my family have gone to Iceland on holiday.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
so I'm looking after both the dogs on my own.
Okay.
And, of course, it's been chucking it down with rain, which means lots of dirty paws, filthy dogs from walks. And quite often I sort of feel stressed about, I've got to get them clean before I get them in the house and all that sort of stuff. And this week I've thought, no, sod it. I'll clean up properly at the end of the week.
Yeah.
All the muddy paws and the paw prints and everything, I'll sort all that out. And do you know what? It's quite a relief.
Yeah.
Quite a relief telling yourself, don't worry about it. It's okay. And I've realised I don't do it enough. And I suspect there are probably a lot of people listening who don't do it enough. So sometimes it's useful just to tell yourself, it doesn't matter. We'll deal with that later. So I feel quite grateful for the ability to do that today.
That is good because I think I think we all know people that get really wound up about that sort of thing, and and I know there's nothing wrong with being house proud.
No.
But when it's taken to the extreme, where your shoes got to be lined up in a certain way, and you got and things have got to cushions are lined up on a certain way on the couch, and if they're not in that particular order, they go crazy, and it's the end of the world, and it has to be put back. And so letting go of stuff. I think it's a great skill to have. Yeah,
I mean, I'm never like that house proud wise, as you know, but I've gone down another level this week. So I'm going to live in squalor for
absolute poverty,
a week and then sort it out. Yeah, it'll be like Elizabeth Close here by the end of the week.
That was a notoriously poor development in the heart of Maidstone, wasn't it?
It was right next to Bailey's, the shoe shop.
It was in our youth. That was a place you really had to avoid because it was always scary.
Yeah, because if anyone is in your class that lived in Elizabeth Close, you knew you were going to get beaten up.
Well, my alcoholic uncle lived there for a little while.
Did he?
Yeah, he did, and I remember sort of going in there to see him, and it was pretty horrific. But it's all gone now. It is a shopping centre down there now, isn't it? Or the Sainsbury's, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. When my brother was born,
Yeah.
Sorry. When I was born, my brother, who was the eldest of the three of us, apparently he said to my mum, "We're not going to be one of those big dirty families, are we?"
Which is out of the mouths of babes. Yeah. I wonder if he has that in a voice. I wonder if that came to him from somewhere.
I don't know, but my mum and dad stopped there, so perhaps it had an impact.
No more children. So the skill of being able to let go, that's not on the list of 100 skills every person should master, but it should be.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, what is on the list this week?
Well, nothing not in that league at all, but it's treating frostbite. I mean, that's a skill. I mean, we're never going to need that, are we? Have you ever? Your fingers get a bit cold, perhaps, when you go out and throw snowballs, but
no. I mean, I don't know how cold does it have to be before frostbite kicks in.
I don't know. No idea, mate. I didn't look into it any further. That was one of the skills that they suggested that every person should know. I'd go as far as to say, of all the skills we've discussed so far, that is the least useful for us. Oh, sorry, apart from wrestling a bear or whatever it was. It was something like that, wasn't it? But yeah,
something like that, or escaping from a bear or something.
Yeah, surviving a bear attack. Or something.
That's it. Surviving a bear. So I put this in the same bracket as surviving a bear attack and dealing with frostbite.
Yeah,
don't bother.
No.
Don't waste your time.
It's not a skill you need.
No, watch the telly. Just
don't go out and get frostbite. Then you won't need to. That skill is null and void.
Exactly.
Should we go on to the on this day in music then? But which year? See if you can. See, last week, Lizzie, my daughter, was saying that she got them because there was Harry Styles, wasn't it, and Ed Sheeran, much more her era.
Yeah. What are you trying to say?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that mostly we go for things that are a little bit older. Because I'm more comfortable with it, but this one's sort of in between, if you like. The first one.
Good. Come on then, let's go for it. I'm taking you on, Lizzie, this week. Okay.
We could. The first one is this is the number one in which year was the number one in the UK? Things Can Only Get Better by Dee Reed.
Can only get better.
Professor Brian Cox was in the group, wasn't he?
Yeah.
One of his claims to fame. What year was it number one?
Got to be the 90s, isn't it? I'm going to go 92.
Oh, 94. So you just
no.
Points. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Tough. This is tough. Well, and the next one, born on the 11th. What's the date today? Is it the 11th? Yeah, it is
the 11th. Yeah.
So happy birthday today to Sheryl Crow.
Oh yeah, Sheryl Crow. I was watching a TikTok of her yesterday.
Well, do you know what year she was born then?
That's quite tricky. Sheryl Crow. So she's got to be. She must be vaguely my age. Probably she'd be a bit younger, perhaps. 68.
1962.
Oh, she's older than me.
She's older than you, mate. Yeah. So. She's at that rare point where she's born in 1962 and she's actually 62.
Wow, she's 62. Blimey, she looks good for 62.
She does wear extremely well, doesn't she?
Yeah, I bet I won't look that good at 62. I mean, I don't look that good now.
Oh no, well I'm actually at 62, so I've
got to be honest. Now, don't take this the wrong way.
I'm not going to take it.
Sheryl Crow looks better than you.
Does she? Yeah, she's probably drunk a little bit less vodka. That's all it is.
You don't know that. You don't know. I bet she's drunk a bit of Jack Daniels in her time.
Yes, more likely.
Yeah. 62. Oh dear, I'm not doing very well here. Okay.
Wait, do you know the year that, again, it actually happened on the 11th of February?
Yeah.
That's the anniversary today of the death of Whitney Houston. Now, she died at the age of 48.
Yeah, I remember her dying.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be one of those it was longer ago than I thought. She was how old when she died?
It was 48. Yeah,
48.
Yeah, bless her.
This is the year that came into my head, but the year that came into my head was 2010.
Oh no, you're just outside again, 2012.
Oh, for God's sake.
So you've hit the post on a couple of those, haven't you?
I've hit the post and blasted one wildly over the bar.
Yeah.
Well, Lizzie, after my hubris there, I expect you've probably beaten me. But
We'll wait to hear the comeback. Because I also left in the thing in here on this last, when I was typing in about Whitney Houston, I left in that she was in a band with Vangelis as well. Just for the fact that I thought I'm building up a super group here. So we got Demis Roussos, Vangelis, obviously.
Yeah.
Sid Vicious and Whitney Vicious.
I don't know what sort of stuff they're going to be playing.
I don't know.
I'm honest.
It's multi-genre, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be. Can you imagine what their first single would be like? I mean, there'd be quite a lot of interest in it, wouldn't there?
There would be a lot of interest. There'd probably be a lot of internal. They'll have internal dialogue, won't they, about themselves? Am I doing the right thing? Is this a wafty song? Am I doing this just for the money?
Can you imagine what they'd be like in the studio, though?
Vicious. He'd be all over the place. He wouldn't turn up, probably, would he?
Well, Vicious and Houston would be all over the place, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
I mean, they'd be caning it, wouldn't they?
Would be, yeah.
I'd be surprised if they turned up on day 2.
Yeah, Roussos and Vangelis would just be calming them down a little bit, wouldn't they? They'd be the voice of reason, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if Roussos and Vangelis had any substance issues, did they?
Don't think so, no. I think Roussos, perhaps he had a unhealthy relationship with food. Or
You're only saying that based on what he looked like.
Yes.
I can't actually picture Vangelis.
No, I can't. No.
So I'm going to go and Google a picture of him now. We'll probably find that he had a heroin and habits or something. All right,
mate.
See you next time.
See you later.
Laters.
Bye.
Bye. Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work or sort through the extensive archive of past episodes, just visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram at Sideways Podcast, and you can email us if you have a question or if there's something you'd like us to cover. But most of all, we want to tell you how grateful we are that you come and listen, and we ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.